important part in this chapter is causes of the two world wars. Here we are going to compare the two world wars. But no two wars are similar. As in the First World War and the Second World War, we have some dissimilarities. The first one is, it has a time gap of 21 years. Not only that, but also changes in economic condition compared to the First World War, Second World War. There was a lot of economic changes, and also the diplomatic alliances among the nations. And the fourth one will be the military hardware. So tomorrow in the examination, if he is asking what are the dissimilarities between the two world wars, you are going to mention these four. A gap of 21 years between the World War I and II, changes in the economic condition. Third one will be diplomatic alliances. Fourth one, military hardware. So coming to the immediate cause for the First World War, eventually to begin a war there will be a trigger. Something will ignite the war. In the First World War, that ignition was given by an incident which took place in the year 1914 on 28th June. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria was killed by a Serbian fanatic. Who is this fanatic? A person who filled with excessive political zeal or religious zeal. So, a Serbian fanatic had killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand. As Austria was an ally of Germany and Hungary, whereas Serbia was an ally of UK, France and Russia. Austria declared war on Serbia. Immediately, Britain, France and Russia came to support Serbia in defense. Then the Central Powers like Germany and Italy, and it allied to Austria also joined the war, and this marked the beginning of the World War I. Now coming to the World War II, what was the immediate cause? This was quite intentional, as the immediate provocation of the World War II was the German tanks driving into Poland on September 1st, 1939. As I said, it was an intentional incident that took place. Hitler purposefully, he just invaded Poland. What was the reason behind that is, it was as a punishment for refusing to hand over the ports of Danzig to Germany. Poland has refused to hand it over the ports of Danzig to Germany. Polish territory lay between two parts of Germany. A corridor which is existing between Poland and Germany, in between. This we call it as what? Polish territory. So Hitler thought the takeover of Poland will also be a small military operation. He underestimated, but it was more a purposeful event. Eventually, in support of Poland, Britain jumped onto the Polish side and France was supported the next day. France also supported Poland. This marked the beginning of the World War II. Clear? So World War I, immediate cause, World War II, immediate cause we have discussed. Coming to the long-term causes, long-term causes among them. The first one will be aggressive nationalism. Number 2, imperialism. Number 3, secret alliances. And concluded with one of the important long-term causes, aggressive nationalism. The ideology of nationalism was a positive impulse. Nationalism in any form will be a positive impulse for the country. But when it comes to the topic, foundation of modern states, the foundation of the modern states which took place in the early 19th century, especially two important nations have been formed. One is unification of Germany, the another one is Italy. Their ideologies were quite different. They have pride towards their nation and hatred against the neighbors. This hatred gradually developed and it turned a negative impulse to the neighboring nations. The best examples, one is Italian fascism in the year 1923 under the leadership of Mussolini. The another one, National Socialism of Germany, popularly known as Nazism under the leadership of Adolf Hitler. Both these forms were quite aggressive and also they were not in a constructive mode but in a destructive mode. These two ideologies were quite destructive to the world, which ultimately resulted in World War I and II. The another important long-term cause is imperialism. So what is the meaning of imperialism? It is a policy of extending a country's power and influence through colonization. As you can see here, the industrial capital developed in European countries, especially Britain, Germany, US. They needed markets for their products and access to raw materials. As their capital further accumulated in banks and financial institutions, they looked for safe investment and the best investment opportunities were in colonies. And where are these colonies? Means one in Asia, the another one in Africa. So eventually they ended up with a race among them. As a result, the new industrial powers like Japan, Germany and Italy emerged and they wanted to redivide the colonies, but the old powers were not ready for this. Old powers means Britain, France. These two nations were not willing to redivide the colonies, but the newly developed industrial countries like Japan, Germany and Italy willing to redivide the colonies and they want to dominate those colonies. This created much stress, often leading to wars. Another important long-term cause is secret alliances. After defeating France in 1870, Bismarck, the German Chancellor, decided to isolate France. He had a secret alliance with Austria in 1879 and with Italy in 1882. This defensive alliance was meant to partly save. He wanted to save Austria from Russia and Italy from France. France has broken out this isolation and came up with a mutual alliance with Russia in 1891 and resolving all the issues with Britain and had an alliance in the year 1904. So this ultimately resulted in a triple entity in 1907. The triple entity members are Russia, France, Britain. Whereas the other side, the triple alliance led by Germany. These two alliances, triple entity and triple alliances, had jealous and suspicion of one another. Instead of maintaining real peace, these alliances created an atmosphere of fear and armed peace in Europe, eventually led to World War I and II. The last important long-term cause, militarism. Here if you see, militarism is the belief that military might is the best way to ensure security and war is good way to solve problems. Any diplomatic problem can be resolved only through military operation. Military operations, that was the mindset of the Europeans. And how much this went into the Europeans? From 1880 to 1914, the military expenditure of six big powers, especially Germany, Russia, Austria, Italy, France and Britain, increased by over 300%. Means out of their budget, they have increased 300 times and spending only on war equipment. And in this militarism, we need to focus on three things which are noteworthy, especially the context of the militarism. One, each of these countries built massive standing armies. They have recruited more and more of army men, and they have increased their armaments and built a mindset among the people to support war. They have just changed the mindset of the people. What was the mindset of the people? Is that they should support wars. War is the only solution. And the second important point in this militarism is a large industrial complex producing arms emerged, which constantly promoted the ideas of using war as the solution to diplomatic problems. Any problem can only be resolved with what means? By war. And the third one, wars usually increase their profits manifold. Economies are growing only because of wars. Clear. The fourth important part in this chapter is the special context of the Second World War. What was the reason behind the Second World War and what is special regarding that? First, before that, we need to learn about the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles took place in the year 1919, after the end of the World War I. This was the biggest conference as it was attended by 32 national delegations, and they covered 3/4 of the population of the world. Among them, the 5 big victorious powers of the time, USA, UK, France, Italy and Japan, participated in this conference. But Socialist Russia and Germany, Austria and also Turkey were not invited to the conference. Here you need to focus on one thing. Always is asking in the examination the nations which have not attended the Treaty of Versailles. One is USSR, number 2 Germany, number 3 Austria and number 4 Turkey. Hence, those deliberating the future of the world did not have the wise counsel or deeply felt wishes of these powers. A surprising factor is that Germany was the main culprit in the World War I, but it was not invited to the Treaty of Versailles. Germany was not invited to the Treaty of Versailles. Not only that, but the five big victorious powers have imposed some territorial penalties and military cuts on Germany. First, Germans were asked to return their colonies in Africa occupied in the year 1980s, and European areas like Alsace and Lorraine, which they occupied from France in 1871. That was the first territorial penalties. Next, they also imposed a military cuts. Germany was asked to pull down its army strength to 1 lakh from 9 lakh during the World War I. It was also asked not to have any submarines and restrict its naval strength to 6 battleships of less than 10,000 tons. So, these two, one is the territorial penalties and the military sanctions or military cuts, have humiliated the Germans. This has ultimately resulted to the Second World War. League of Nations. The Treaty of Versailles also set up the League of Nations to prevent wars in the future. As you know, Russia or Germany was not invited to become the members of the League of Nations. They were not even invited to the Treaty of Versailles. USA could not become a member. This is very important topic, important point for the examination. USA could not become a member as the US Congress refused to sanction the proposal of the President Woodrow Wilson, even though he was very active in the formation of League. Hence, even at its peak in the year 1934, the League had 58 member nations. It was hoped that what was the main purpose behind the League of Nations means it will help eliminate wars through collective security. This will be your first important point regarding the League of Nations. And second, settled disputes between countries through arbitration or negotiation. Number 2. These two are the most important points regarding the League of Nations. What was the purpose behind? One is collective security and another one settled dispute between countries through arbitration or negotiation. Not only that, it also set up several international agencies, especially for conducting welfare activities. This will be your third important point in League of Nations. Welfare activities like health, labor welfare, and also an international court of justice to settle the legal disputes between the nations. Even though this League of Nations had showed a lot of promise and much was expected of it, but eventually it failed to prevent Germany and Italy from violating the international agreements and attacking other countries. Lot of expectation was there on League of Nations, but Germany and Italy has completely violated the rules framed by the League of Nations. Germany challenged to vengeful domination. Germany is going to take revenge. After the defeat of Germany at the end of the First World War in 1919, Germany was humiliated. It was humiliated because of the Treaty of Versailles. as the two important decisions have been taken in the Treaty of Versailles. One, territorial sanctions have been done, the another one, military cuts. And this ultimately created a reaction in Germans, which led to the rise of Hitler and his party. They wanted to recover the lost territories, and not only that, they want to restore German dominance over Central Europe and end the restrictions on Germany armaments. Germany reindustrialized itself furiously under the Nazis and developed a massive army. In the Treaty of Versailles, German army was actually 9 lakhs, which was cut down to 1 lakh. And armament industries, which could only be served by a war. Once again, the mindset of the Germans have been changed. Any solution for any diplomatic alliance will be war. Consequences of the two world wars. In this topic, we are going to learn about the long-lasting impact on the politics, society, economy of the world. First topic, enormous human cost. The First World War, 10,000 million people were killed, whereas Second World War was still more devastating. 20 to 25 million people were killed. Majority of them were men, and almost all of them were under the age of 40. And the second important point in enormous human cost is the two world wars also established a regime of lethal arms race. Particularly, they used nuclear and also chemical weapons. Coming to the second important subtopic is democratic principles asserted. Democratic principles asserted. Few important points are there in this paragraph. Number one, the two world wars also brought home the dangers of having undemocratic governments. Example, Nazism under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, fascist under the leadership of Mussolini. The second important point in this paragraph, with the end of the First World War, several empires came to an end. Among them, the first one, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Russian Empire, Ottoman Empire, German Empire. These four major empires came to an end after the First World War. Third important point, Russia has seen new developments. A new ideology existed in Russia in the form of Germany grew out of their monarchy and became a Weimar Republic. In the same manner, many of the colonies were just striving for independence, and ultimately after the Second World War they formed as an independent nation, especially in Asia and Africa. Change in balance of power. As earlier we have discussed, World War I has brought the end of some of the major empires, especially German Empire, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, Turkish empires. And one more important point, the map of Eastern and Central Europe was redrawn on the basis of nationality, economic viability and military security. Based on three principles, the map of Europe have been redrawn. And the third point in this, World War II came to an end. The map of the world changed yet again as ex-colonies rose to become independent nations. Coming to new international organizations. After the World War I, League of Nations was established to resolve disputes between the nations in a peaceful manner, and it was not quite successful. Immediately after the Second World War, one more international organization came into existence with a name called UNO, United Nations Organization. This United Nations organization is a kind of world government based on four principles. Time and time in the examination is asking, what are those four principles? Number one, preserve peace, uphold human rights, respect international law, and promote social progress. These four basic principles of United Nations organization. So, added to this United Nations, some important organs are there like UNICEF, United Nations Children's Fund, UNESCO, United Nations Educational and Scientific and Cultural Organization, WHO, World Health Organization, ILO, International Labour Organization. So these are some of the international organizations established after the Second World War. Enfranchisement of women. The women got the right to vote, which have been given by the British in the year 1918. But before that, when all the men are in the battlefield during the First and Second World War, the industrial production and other services are required, and women took the responsibility to continue forward. Women had to work in factories, shops, office, voluntary services, hospitals and schools. They have gained the confidence during this period. They turned as the breadwinners. Then slowly the woman started to raise her voice for equality in all walks of life, finally achieving the right to vote. It was a very hard earned right.